The vast emptiness of space held its breath as the small human colony on Epsilon Prime drifted quietly through its routine day. Captain J. Park stood on the observation deck, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant stars. Nothing suggested the imminent disaster that would change everything. The first warning came as a subtle vibration. Navigation screens flickered. Kim, the colony's lead navigator, frowned at her console. "Something's not right," she muttered, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Seconds later, the first Zaran ships emerged from subspace. They were unlike anything humans had encountered before, sleek, razor-sharp vessels that seemed to cut through the darkness like obsidian blades. Their energy signatures were massive, overwhelming the colony's basic scanning systems. "Incoming!" Kim screamed, her voice breaking through the sudden tension on the bridge. Captain Park didn't hesitate. "Defensive protocols. Activate emergency shields." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it was futile. The alien ships moved with a precision that suggested decades of warfare experience. The first energy burst tore through the colony's outer defenses like paper. Alarms blared. Colonists ran through corridors, some heading to emergency shelters, others frantically trying to gather critical equipment and data. From the lead Zaran vessel, Commander Vrel watched the human colony with cold calculation. Humans were a minor species, barely worth the effort of total destruction, yet something about their unexpected resistance intrigued him. Weapons platforms on the colony's surface attempted to return fire, but their projectiles were pathetic against the Zaran shields. It was like throwing pebbles against a mountain. Each defensive position was systematically neutralized, with surgical precision that suggested the attackers knew exactly where to strike. J. Park knew they had minutes, perhaps less. He looked at Kim, who was already preparing the emergency transmission. "Make sure Earth gets everything," he commanded. Data streams began uploading. Ship configurations, weapon signatures, invasion patterns. The colony's structural integrity was collapsing. Sections were being systematically destroyed, compartment by compartment. Colonists who hadn't reached shelters were simply erased by precision energy weapons that left nothing behind. Commander Vrel's communication officer reported efficiency. Colony neutralization at 67% completion. No significant resistance detected. But resistance wasn't about physical fighting, it was about survival, about hope. As the final sections of the colony began to crumble, Captain Park made one last decision. "Initiate emergency protocol Omega-5, he said quietly. This wasn't just a transmission. It was a declaration, a warning, a promise of future retribution. Kim's hands moved with lightning speed. The transmission burst through space, encoded with more than just data. It carried the collective determination of a species that refused to be eliminated. The Zaran ships continued their methodical destruction. Within 30 minutes, Epsilon Prime was nothing more than scattered debris and cosmic dust. Commander Vrel marked the mission as complete, unaware that the transmission would change everything. Millions of kilometers away, on a blue planet called Earth, alarms would soon begin to sound. The message was clear. Humanity was under attack, and humanity would respond. As the last fragments of the colony dissolved into space, a single thought seemed to hang in the cosmic void. This was not an end, but a beginning. Commander Vrel returned to his primary command center, confident in the total elimination of the human outpost. He couldn't know that the simple act of sending a transmission would become the most significant moment in human history. The transmission arrived at Earth's primary defense headquarters like a thunderbolt. Admiral Wu Chen was reviewing routine reports when the encrypted message from Epsilon Prime cut through every communication channel. His weathered face turned stone cold as he processed the details of the complete colony destruction. Within hours, global emergency protocols activated. Every major government, military installation, and research facility became a single unified organism focused on one goal: survival. Dr. Yoon Choi's Technology Research Center in Seoul transformed overnight. Brilliant scientists who once competed now worked in perfect synchronization. The fragmented transmission from Epsilon Prime contained microscopic details about alien technology, enough to begin reverse engineering. "We have exactly 72 hours to prepare something they won't expect," Dr. Choi announced to her team. Young engineers and veteran researchers worked without sleep, consuming endless cups of strong coffee and energy supplements. Military academies across the planet shifted their entire curriculum. Traditional warfare strategies were discarded. Students now trained in adaptive combat, quantum technology integration, and psychological warfare techniques specifically designed for an unknown alien threat. In Beijing, advanced manufacturing centers began producing experimental weapon systems. Factories that once created consumer electronics now churned out sophisticated defense platforms. Robotic assembly lines worked with inhuman precision, creating technologies that blended human creativity with machine efficiency. Admiral Chen understood that this wasn't just a military response. It was a species-level transformation. Humanity's greatest strength had always been adaptation. Where other civilizations might collapse under such a sudden threat, humans would evolve. Satellite networks were reconfigured. Communication systems were hardened against potential alien interference. Every orbital platform became a potential defensive position. Scientists developed new encryption methods that would make human communication virtually unreadable to external analysis. Strategic coordinator Sung Lee developed a multi-layered defense strategy. Instead of concentrating resources in one location, he proposed a distributed network of defensive and offensive capabilities. If one system fell, others would remain functional. "We are not preparing for a war," Sung Lee told his senior team. "We are preparing to ensure our species' survival." Universities worldwide suspended normal operations. Medical researchers studied the limited data about alien physiology. Technology departments became emergency design centers. Even art schools contributed, with designers creating camouflage and communication systems that challenged traditional thinking. The global economy shifted. Stock markets stabilized through government interventions. Resources were redirected. Luxury industries were temporarily shut down. Every economic sector was now part of the survival infrastructure. Space agencies that once competed now shared every scrap of technological insight. NASA, CNSA, ISRO, and ESA worked as a single unified research entity. Prototype spacecraft designs that had been decades away were now fast-tracked into production. Military recruitment centers saw unprecedented numbers of volunteers. Young people who had grown up in peaceful times now understood the true meaning of global threat. Training programs were accelerated, creating a new generation of soldiers prepared for an entirely new type of warfare. Dr. Choi's team made a breakthrough on the third day. They discovered a potential weakness in the alien technology's energy transmission systems. It was small, almost insignificant, but in warfare, small advantages could change everything. Admiral Chen called a global emergency conference. Representatives from every continent gathered, not through traditional diplomatic channels but through secure quantum-encrypted communication platforms. The message was clear. Humanity would not just defend, humanity would respond. As the first prototype weapons rolled off production lines and experimental spacecraft were prepared for potential combat, something fundamental had changed. The human species had transformed from a collection of competing nations into a single, unified organism. The aliens who destroyed Epsilon Prime had made one critical mistake. They had awakened a sleeping giant, and this giant was preparing to fight back. The first human counterstrike was nothing like the Zaran Dominion expected. Major Daquan's Special Operations Team moved like ghosts through the enemy supply corridors, their experimental adaptive camouflage making them nearly invisible. Intelligence had revealed a critical Zaran logistics hub near the Orion cluster. This wasn't just a military target. It was the primary supply line for their entire invasion fleet. Destroying it would cripple their offensive capabilities. Yoon Pak, the team's tactical specialist, had spent weeks studying alien communication patterns. Their technology was advanced, but predictable. Humans had discovered something the Zarans never anticipated. Creativity was their ultimate weapon. The strike team's modified spacecraft approached the logistics hub using an unconventional method. They mimicked space debris, their energy signatures deliberately degraded to appear like random cosmic waste. Zaran scanning systems, designed for detecting sophisticated threats, completely missed them. In position, Major Kwan whispered into his communication device. His team was split into 3 units, each with a specific target within the massive space station. Rihan, the engineering lead, had developed specialized electromagnetic pulse devices that would bypass alien shielding. These weren't standard military weapons. They were scientific innovations transformed into instruments of war. The first explosion was silent. In the vacuum of space, sound didn't travel, but the visual impact was devastating. An entire section of the Zaran logistics hub simply disintegrated, its complex infrastructure collapsing from within. Alarm systems on the station went crazy. Zaran security forces scrambled, but their response was mechanical, predictable. They moved according to predetermined protocols, exactly what the human team was counting on. While primary defense systems responded to the initial breach, Yunpak's secondary team infiltrated a completely different section. Their goal wasn't destruction, but information extraction. Alien computer systems were breached, massive data streams downloaded in microseconds. Major Kwan understood this wasn't just a military operation. Every piece of information stolen was a weapon. Every system disrupted was a strategic victory. Zaran commander watching the unfolding chaos couldn't comprehend what was happening. Human attacks defied every known military doctrine. They didn't fight like a conventional military. They fought like an adaptive, intelligent organism. 3 hours into the operation, the human team had destroyed critical infrastructure, stolen invaluable data, and disappeared without leaving a trace. The Zaran Dominion was left confused, their perfect invasion strategy suddenly looking vulnerable. Communication intercepts later revealed the psychological impact. Zaran military leadership began questioning their initial assessment of humanity. These weren't just another species to be conquered, they were something entirely different. Rihan's technological innovations played a crucial role. The electromagnetic pulse devices weren't just weapons. They were complex scientific instruments that could selectively disable specific technological systems. One device could shut down communication networks while leaving life support systems functional. Major Kwan's team returned to their staging area, their mission accomplished with minimal casualties. They had proven something fundamental. Humanity's strength wasn't in overwhelming technological superiority, but in adaptability, creativity, and unpredictability. Earth received the mission data. Analysts worked quickly, extracting every possible insight. This wasn't just a successful military operation, it was a statement. Humanity was telling the Zaran Dominion, "We are not your victims." The psychological impact was immediate. Zaran invasion plans, which had seemed inevitable just weeks ago, now looked uncertain. For the first time, they were experiencing something they had never encountered in centuries of galactic conquest: genuine uncertainty. As the human special operations team celebrated their success, they knew this was just the beginning. The real war was just starting, and humanity was ready. The universe watched, and for the first time, the Zaran Dominion felt a hint of fear. The war wasn't just about weapons, it was about breaking the enemy's spirit. Jin Su understood this better than anyone. As the lead intelligence analyst, she had spent weeks studying every microscopic detail of Zaran communication patterns. Their civilization, for all its technological advancement, had a critical weakness: a rigid hierarchical structure that couldn't handle unexpected challenges. The first psychological operation began subtly. Carefully crafted communication signals were inserted into Zaran communication networks. These weren't just random messages. They were precisely designed to create doubt and confusion. Min Kim, the diplomatic strategist, had developed a complex algorithm that targeted the psychological vulnerabilities of the Zaran leadership. Each message was a surgical strike designed to create internal friction. Reconnaissance teams led by Hyun Bae discovered something fascinating about Zaran society. They weren't a unified civilization, but a collection of subspecies held together by strict military control. One well-placed message could create massive internal tensions. The first signs of success came quickly. Intercepted communications showed increasing arguments among Zaran military commanders. Small disagreements became significant conflicts. Their perfect military machine was showing cracks. Jin Su's team created false communication channels that seemed to come from within the Zaran leadership. These messages suggested internal betrayals, potential coup attempts, and strategic disagreements. Each message was crafted with mathematical precision, using their own communication protocols against them. Zaran communication networks began to fragment. Commanders who once worked in perfect synchronization now questioned each other's motives. Trust, the fundamental currency of their military structure, was systematically destroyed. Hyun Bae's reconnaissance teams planted subtle technological viruses that didn't destroy systems but created minor, unexplainable glitches. A communication signal that arrived a millisecond too late. A navigation coordinate slightly off. Small errors that grew into massive doubts. The psychological warfare wasn't about physical destruction. It was about creating uncertainty. Humans were turning the Zaran's own technological superiority into a weapon of mass confusion. Military analysts on Earth watched in fascination. Traditional warfare was about destroying physical infrastructure. This was something entirely different. A war fought in the realm of perception and communication. Min Kim discovered the Zaran had a complex caste system within their military. By carefully leaking information that suggested lower-ranking members were being systematically sacrificed by their leadership, he created internal rebellion. Communication intercepts showed increasing internal tensions. Military units that once worked with machine-like precision now questioned every order. The perfect Zaran military machine was becoming a collection of suspicious, uncertain individuals. Jin Su's most brilliant strategy was creating communication channels that seemed to come from different Zaran subspecies. Each message was designed to trigger deep-seated cultural tensions that had been suppressed under military control. The psychological impact was devastating. Physical battles destroyed infrastructure. But this warfare destroyed something more fundamental: the Zaran's belief in their own invincibility. Hyun Bae's team went further. They began broadcasting historical records of civilizations that had fallen due to internal conflicts. These weren't just messages. They were carefully constructed historical narratives designed to create doubt. Within weeks, the Zaran military structure began to show serious fractures. Units that were once perfectly synchronized now moved with uncertainty. Commanders spent more time watching their own ranks than fighting humans. Earth's strategy was clear: break their spirit before breaking their ships. The most fascinating aspect was how little physical violence was required. A well-placed message could be more destructive than 1,000 missiles. Humans were fighting a war in the realm of perception, communication, and psychological manipulation. As the Zaran Dominion's internal structure began to collapse, one thing became clear. Humanity had discovered a new form of warfare. Not fought with weapons but with information. The universe watched and the Zaran Dominion trembled. The final battle wasn't just a military engagement, it was humanity's ultimate test. Commander Sarah Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Horizon, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display. Thousands of human spacecraft formed a complex living network, each ship connected through quantum communication systems that the Zaran could never understand. Fleet Admiral Tae Kim's voice crackled through the communication channel. All units, prepared, waiting on your command. The Zaran fleet approached like a massive obsidian wave. They believed this would be their final victory. What they didn't realize was that humanity had transformed completely during this conflict. Chief strategist Kang Hwang had spent months preparing this moment. Every ship, every weapon system was more than a military asset. It was a living, adaptive organism. Artificial intelligence and human intuition had merged into something entirely new. The first wave of Zaran attacks came with their traditional overwhelming force. Energy weapons that could destroy entire planetary populations unleashed their full power. But human ships moved differently. They weren't just defending, they were dancing. Each human vessel used an innovative defense mechanism. Instead of blocking attacks, they would subtly shift, allowing enemy weapons to pass through minimal spaces. It was like watching a complex ballet of destruction. Sarah Park understood something the Zarans never would. War wasn't about pure power, but about adaptation. Human ships communicated faster than the enemy could process. When one ship was damaged, surrounding vessels would instantly reconfigure their defensive patterns. The quantum communication network meant every human soldier, every pilot, was connected. They weren't individual fighters, they were a single, massive intelligence. Pain, strategy, and experience were shared instantaneously. Zaran commanders watched in confusion. Their perfect mathematical models of warfare suddenly meant nothing. Humans weren't following any known strategic doctrine. They were creating strategy in real time, faster than computers could calculate. Weapon systems developed during the months of preparation now showed their true potential. Experimental plasma cannons that could reshape their energy output mid-flight. Adaptive shield technologies that could absorb and redirect enemy energy. 3 hours into the battle, the Zaran fleet started showing signs of breakdown. Their rigid, military structure, which had conquered countless civilizations, became a weakness against human unpredictability. Kang Huang's strategic algorithms predicted and redirected enemy attacks before they even happened. Human ships moved with a fluidity that seemed almost supernatural. They weren't just fighting, they were evolving in real time. The psychological warfare from previous stages now showed its true impact. Zaran ships began experiencing communication failures. Units that once worked in perfect synchronization now moved with hesitation. Sarah Park's final strategy was brutal in its simplicity. Instead of destroying the Zaran fleet, they would isolate and divide it. Each Zaran unit was systematically separated, cut off from central command, left vulnerable. As the battle reached its climax, something extraordinary happened. Human ships didn't just fight, they communicated. Not just with each other, but with the very fabric of space around them. Quantum entanglement technologies turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. The Zaran fleet, once considered invincible, began to collapse. Not through massive explosions, but through systematic, precise disruption. Their perfect military machine was being dismantled from within. When the final Zaran command ship was neutralized, it wasn't through conventional destruction. It simply stopped functioning. Its complex systems overwhelmed. Its communication networks shattered. Fleet Admiral Tae Kim's final transmission was simple. Mission accomplished. Humanity had done more than win a battle. They had redefined the very concept of warfare. The universe would never be the same. As debris from the final confrontation drifted through space, one thing became clear. The humans were no longer just survivors. They were conquerors.